Okay, good evening, everybody. How is everyone doing? I hope you're all well. I hope you're good. It's been a couple of weeks since we've done one of those, and we're also hosting it on a Wednesday night. So apologies for that, but I just had something on last night that I couldn't get out of. Is the mic levels okay? Computer's been shut down for weeks now. I've not really had to use it, so God knows what settings have changed. So if someone could just let me know if it all sounds good, if you can hear me, if it's too quiet, and I'll make sure that I make some adjustments before diving into everything else. But either Mo, Chris, Greg, Jeff, Old Fitter, not sure who what your real name is, but good to see you all. Aircon's here as well. Perfect. Okay. For the absolute eagle-eyed of you, you'll have noticed that I actually changed the thumbnail and the title for tonight's call, because I got back from holiday and Monday I thought, right, I'll do my thumbnail and I'll start to think about what I'm going to talk about. And obviously we just signed the debt ceiling, and I thought that was probably something interesting to talk about. And then the Binance lawsuit dropped and I thought, okay, that's interesting. Yep. Then price started to move and I was like, okay, fair enough. We have to see what's going on here. But I thought I'll stick with my guns here and we'll stay with debt ceiling. We'll just talk about Binance SEC under the news section. And then within 24 hours, Coinbase dropped as well. And I was like, okay. And then we had the SEC going on and trying to put a temporary restraining order on assets and all sorts of stuff, freezing transactions. And I thought, actually, we're going to have to shift this here. So I have changed it. We're now looking more at the SEC, the exchange issues that are going on, what really is happening between all of those. I've got a little bit on the US debt ceiling. I'm not sure how much of it we will cover, but we'll go through that. We've had plenty of questions over the last couple of weeks. I'm going to try and tackle those a little bit later on. And there isn't actually a research token for this week, just because I've just come back, and we'll pick those up next week. So the news is very heavily going to be focused on the SEC's war against Binance and Coinbase, and actually having a look at the amount of cryptocurrencies they've identified as a security now, what the common theme is between those, what that issue may be, and where that's going. So I think that's going to be sort of a large portion of what we're going to talk about. As I say, we'll cover the debt ceiling. We'll go into the questions, a lot of the questions talking about BTC price action, BTC dominance, BTC pairing. So we'll have a look at those. Well, then once we finish the questions, we will go into just having a look at BTC and other altcoins from a USD value and where things are going. It being an Avenger call, I expect the price to move massively whilst I'm prepping to talk about that. And we have seen some volatility over the last sort of, I don't know, 72 hours or so. So wouldn't surprise me if that continues a little bit more. But yeah, thanks for joining us. And right, let's just dive straight in, really. Once I get all my screens all sorted, sorry. I'm a bit all over the place, just making sure everything's in the right place. It looks like it all is. So we usually start with this chart. I think it's a good enough chart to start with. We've got BTC on the top for those who are new to this. We've got US dollar on the bottom left, Ethereum in the center, and the S&P 500. It's actually the US 500, but they're the same charts essentially in the bottom right. And these are all on the daily candle at the moment. And I suppose we are focusing on BTC these sort of last few days. But actually, you think about it, the last time we did a talk was the 16th of May. And price was around about 27,000. We're at 26,500. So although we've had a move up to almost 29 and a move back down to 25, we kind of do see ourselves sitting round about where we are. And given the news that dropped on Monday, we were going to see some nervousness about that. We saw a market retrace back up, and then we've seen a slight pullback today. So I don't think there's anything too out of the ordinary of where the price has gone. Ultimately, yes, it dropped quite a lot on Monday, but it recovered that much on Tuesday. And we're just seeing around about a 3% drop at the moment of the price of BTC. I think that's fairly evident across the rest of the crypto space. Yes, so some alts are bleeding a little bit more than BTC is. And what we have seen over the time that I've been away is, I'm actually going to put this one big screen, if I can. Oops. It's been a bit slow today. Why are you not turning? There we go. The big screen for me. So this is the US dollar. And, when I went away, we were around about 101, 101.6. And we've actually seen the strength in the US dollar climbing, which may catch some people by surprise, because actually over the last couple of weeks I've been stressing, because I've been in America, about whether or not they were going to raise the US debt ceiling, if they were going to put some plan of action, or if they were just effectively going to run out of money come the 1st of June. Now, why I was stressing about that was because had that have happened on the 1st of June, then anyone that was paid by the US government would effectively have stopped working. And I was worried that might include airports, as that's when I was flying back. Thankfully, they pushed that back to the 5th of June. And as we're going to talk about later, the Democrats and the Republicans came together, got some agreement, and it was signed by the good old Joe Biden on a Saturday. That woke him up to sign, rolled him out to sign that on a weekend, bless him. And the debt ceiling has been raised, and it will now doesn't need to be revisited until January 2025, which is an interesting time for us in terms of BTC. And we'll cover that one a little bit later on. But we've seen that it has climbed, round about back to 104.8, dropped back down, but still sitting in comfortably about 104. So, a fairly decent, strong move. But from a technical analysis point of view, we talked about this on the daily, but we talked about a bottoming pattern in and around here, maybe a potential double bottom, hitting some similar areas from February, and we would see some bounce. What is not disappointing at the moment, because we don't actually know it's rolled over, but we have failed to take out 105.6, and so we could be in the midst of what people call a dead cat bounce, and we just need to consider that. And obviously, generally, if dollar is ending up going down, risk on assets such as stocks and crypto will then go back up. Right, that's enough of that for now. Let's close that one back down. And let's get on to talk about what most of you are probably aware of, most of you have probably already seen. Hi there, Bijan. Just seen you're in the chat as well. We had two incredibly large SAC lawsuits filed this week, both of them against centralized exchanges. One of them is Binance US, and actually CZ himself. And then the other one was Coinbase. So Binance dropped on Monday, and then Coinbase dropped on Tuesday. Now, what is interesting about this is obviously the timing of these. We'll go through them in a moment, but these are incredibly detailed documents, over 100 pages in each of them, with a fairly amount of detail captured within all of them. And it feels like that was no coincidence that they both happened to have been completed and signed off in the same time period. We have had a bit of a respite from the SEC for probably a good, month or two without getting anything. And now we can see what they were actually doing lined up in the background. So the one with Binance kind of shook the market. We're going to have a look at BNB a little bit later on, but that really drove the price back down. We then had the Coinbase one fall on Tuesday, but actually the market kind of went the other way. And I think, it just goes to show that, when you do hit a key support level, a key level of liquidity, then the market's going to turn the other way. And those that are, most fearful are normally getting preyed on by those that are just going to start buying and drive the price back up. So let's have a look at what it is. And you can go onto the Securities and Exchange Commission website. You can have a look at these. I'll post all of these links in Discord. But effectively, the press release or the summary of the charges against Binance and their founder, CZ. Now, I'm not going to go necessarily through it all, but it's a fairly detailed press release that has gone there. I'll come back to this page in a moment. This is the actual document itself. As I say, it's 136 pages long. So they've got obviously the SEC versus Binance Holding Limited, BAM Trading Services, BAM Management US Incorporated, and CZ. Now, interestingly, and just to be clear, this is a civil action. Just highlight that there. So it's not a criminal action, unlike when we've been talking about SBF and what he's going through. Remember, that is criminal action. This is civil. So I don't know the legal system, totally well, but my understanding is that it's very unlikely, if almost impossible, that there's going to be any jail time attached to this. This is all about just it's going to be a fine. Should the SEC win. How large that fine is, we don't necessarily know. But both this and Coinbase's are both civil actions that have been taken against them. So just going back to the press release, I'm just going to try and skip over most of the things here. But among other, I'm down in this second paragraph because the first paragraph is just listing all the companies. Among other things, the SEC alleges that whilst CZ and Binance publicly claimed the US customers were restricted from transacting on Binance.com, CZ and Binance in reality subverted their own controls to secretly allow high-value US customers to continue to trade on the Binance.com platform. Now, if this is starting to ring a little bit of a bell with you guys, you are going to have to jog back. But round about June or July last year, we actually covered this in an Avenger call. And it is a bit foggy because back then we were talking about 3 hours capital collapse and everything else, but we were getting a lot of FUD around Binance. And one of the things that was raised in the FUD was that there was investigations being placed in effectively elite documents, which had suggested that Binance compliance officers were talking to each other, were allowing customers or were encouraging customers to use things like VPNs to circumnavigate the restrictions that had been held to stop them from doing certain things on Binance US, such as using like earn, trading the derivatives side of things, futures and all that kind of stuff. Now, again, I can't even remember which video it is. I just vaguely remember us talking about it. But CZ at the time, I think that's when he started the tweets of for FUD. He sort of went to quite a lot of detail saying that, whilst they may use VPNs, that's not actually how they geolocate where people are. And it's all about addresses that they sign up with. It's about where money comes in and where money comes out. And they can use that to determine whether or not that person, is primarily based and established the relationship with Binance in the US. I will just say from a personal note, I tried to jump on Binance whilst I was in America, and it tried to take me to Binance US. It wouldn't let me log on to Binance.com because I wanted to just make some transactions. So I actually did have to turn on my VPN and convince my PC that I was in the UK, and I could just get onto Binance as I normally would. I wasn't trading derivatives anyway. I just wanted to peace of mind that I was on the right account that I should be in. So this is not new information that's come out. It's just finally the SEC has actually got round to collating all the alleged data and information and facts that they need to go forward with the lawsuit. I'm going to just skip through. One of the biggest things that's been mentioned, and I brought it up here, scanned through the document for it. I haven't read all 136 pages, but I have kind of just scanned through quite a bit of it because I think there's some interesting bits when we talk about the cryptos later on. But the biggest thing that is hitting all the news headlines at the moment is paragraph 111. And allegedly, Binance CCO admitted to another compliance officer in December of 2018, we are operating as an effing unlicensed security exchange in the USA, bro. And that's what the SEC is really hammering home here, is that this cavalier attitude, cowboy nature within Binance's senior echelons is, as far as they were concerned, they were a securities exchange, and that's how they were going to adopt themselves within the US. And so I suppose, I don't know the mindset behind this, they're saying, right, well, if people were so willing and so blatantly and flagrantly just talking about it in this kind of language to each other, then that's how they saw themselves. And if that is the case, then they have violated security laws, and they've gone through that. So that's why they're going after CZ. They don't actually name the CCO in question. It's Sam, someone, I can't remember his surname. It's that long ago we actually covered that. But yeah, and again, there may well be a case for this, but if it's a leaked document and it's just, I suppose it depends on what kind of document it is, the type of correspondence, but this is just the one incident. This feels to me like a decent solicitor, decent lawyer could probably bat this one away, as that's just someone who was speaking out of turn. That's not on behalf of the entire company. It's not like CZ announced that publicly that that's what it's going to be, and the banner that was on the website. So if that's all they've really got to go in that particular instance, then they may necessarily have a problem. But when you scroll down through here, I'll be honest, there are other, there's loads of things where it talks about this in these inverted commas, and these are things that have all been taken from these leaked documentations. And when you get down, I can't remember, I think it's about page 37 or 39. It talks about how they would circumnavigate the geo identification process and effectively using VPNs. It's somewhere within it. I'm not going to waste our time trying to dive into it. If you really want to, I'll post it within there. Mr. Taco, I've seen your comment. Yes, I will get on to exactly what you've put in the chat a little bit later on. What is interesting is they then put an awful lot of details. I've picked out Matic here, but they actually listed an incredible amount of tokens. So for those of you that aren't aware, within this lawsuit, they have identified, I think it's 10 tokens, cryptos, that they now deem as security. Those are those, I'm looking over because I want my scratch pad, and they've almost rubbed off. Solana, Cardano, Polygon, Filecoin, we've got Decentraland, we've got we've got Algorand, which we kind of knew about, and Axie Infinity. And what they've done is they've spent pages upon pages of collecting narratives. It's ever so slightly different between each one as to why they believe that these are securities. And so this is all the Matic one. They go through sort of what they do. I'm going to cover this a little bit later on. I'm going to summarize them all when we finish the Coinbase one. But it's fairly detailed, to be fair. It's a lot of pages that's gone within it, to try and identify it. So that was about 7 pages just for Matic, Filecoins here. And then, we go on and on. I'm not going to bother later in the point. Cosmos, that was another one, that was on the list, which interesting, very similar to Polkadot, but Polkadot wasn't named. So that dropped, market reacted as we saw, and then I think nobody probably saw this one coming, but the very next day we then get hit with Coinbase as well. And it's just Coinbase in this instance here, so they're not after Brian Armstrong or anyone else, just Coinbase and Coinbase Global. And again, this one's 101 pages. And they're just going that effectively they have been acting as an unregistered security provider. Now this one, I didn't even think about this. I've not even thought about this for all the FUD, for all of the thought that Coinbase may actually be sued by the SEC, which, let's face it, has been going on for months. But just bear in mind that Coinbase is on the NASDAQ. Yeah, it's floated on the New York Stock Exchange. How do you do that? Well, you have to go through SEC approval. And lo and behold, Coinbase direct listing was set for approval April 14th, 2021, after SEC approval. So bear in mind, these people have gone into the SEC, right, to try and float on the NASDAQ, but they must have had to open up their books, explain exactly what they do, how they go about doing all these things. And at the time, the SEC were like, yeah, you boys are good enough. We're happy with what you're doing. Of course, we'll put you on the stock market. And then you fast forward 2 years, and suddenly now, out of the blue, with, bear in mind, absolute zero, guidance or regulation out there to determine what is a security and what isn't. They've now determined that they've breached those laws, and they need a slap on the wrist and a healthy fine. So real mixed messages there, and you could understand why the likes of Coinbase are, one, utterly and totally confused, and two, thoroughly pissed off, because you go through all of this, you believe that you are a legitimate exchange, you've gone through the SEC approval process to get listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and then you know what, crypto isn't the flavor of the month anymore. The current Democratic Party are not particularly crypto friendly. We've seen that at the moment, and the narrative has been very much to shift away from cryptocurrencies. And for any of you that kind of follow that Operation Chokehold 2.0 and sort of the real restriction in off and on ramps of crypto exchanges within the United States as sort of a precursor to laying the groundwork to them rolling out a CBDC, this seems to really fit the bill there. And Coinbase have been pretty vocal on their Twitter over the last couple of days. So this is a really interesting pin tweet that was issued yesterday. I think we missed the start of it. Try and rewind it back to the beginning and make it bigger if I can. So 71 times they mentioned staking when they went for their report. For their approval. Yes, it's referencing the Howey test is pretty old. Worried about 1 million jobs. I don't think that's necessarily anything to worry about. Other countries looking to establish it, 33. And that's the problem, is it? The SEC have done zero to really help the likes of Coinbase and everyone else. But the numbers there, they don't lie, you know. And if Coinbase are saying, well, you know, we did meet with you 2 years ago. We've been in constant dialogue with you for the past 2 years to try and get an understanding of what it is. And don't forget, only 4 or 5 weeks ago, we were talking about how Coinbase had taken the SEC to court to say, actually, we sent you 50 yes/no questions for you to answer, for us to help us identify what a security is, and you refuse to answer those. So they're taking them to court to get the judge to say, well, actually, you have to provide this information. That is in the best interest of the American investor, to them to have some clarity on what exactly makes a security in the crypto space. So that hasn't been resolved yet either, unfortunately. And then Brian Armstrong, CEO of Coinbase, he released a statement regarding the SEC complaint against us today. So obviously he released this yesterday. We're proud to represent the industry in court to finally get some clarity around crypto rules. What I did find amusing, bear in mind how big Coinbase is, and I appreciate their stock has taken a bit of a tumble. There's a little QR code where you can donate to help to pay towards their fees and all that kind of stuff. But I suppose it's just a solidarity from the crypto community more than they actually needing the money. But remember, that's what he says. The SEC reviewed our business and allowed us to become a public company in 2021. We discussed that. The SEC have said repeatedly, come in and talk to us. But Brian's gone on to say there is no path to come in and register. Apparently, they have tried repeatedly, so we don't get list. List securities. I don't understand what that means. We reject the vast majority of the assets we review. So yeah, what he was saying and what was in that little bit there is, you know, they have quite a scrutinizing policy of actually what are we going to list. If it doesn't meet our criteria, which they believe is more onerous than it needs to be, then they don't list it. They then make a very clear point, and we had this again, another couple of Avenger calls, the SEC and the CFTC, so the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, I can't remember the exact title, they can't agree on what is the difference between a security and a commodity. Some people are labeling ETH as a security, some people are labeling that as a commodity, and a few other altcoins as well. So if those two governing factions can't agree on what it is, what are those that are supposed to be doing this in the industry to do? And that is why the US Congress is introducing new legislation to fix this situation, and the rest of the world is moving to put clear rules in place to support this technology. Instead of publishing a clear rule book, the SEC has taken a regulation by enforcement approach that is harming America. So if we need to avail ourselves of the courts to get clarity, so be it. By the way, the case is not obvious. The Coinbase suit is very different from others out there. The complaint filed against us is exclusively focused on what is or is not a security, and we are confident in our facts and the law. We will get the job done, and in the meantime, let's keep moving forward and building, and as an industry, America will get this right in the end. Unfortunately, I think it may be too little, too late for that. But, you know, I totally get their point there in terms of there is a massive lack of clarity in what Coinbase, Kraken, Bittrex, BitGet, all these other ones that have had, and Binance US, obviously, all these claims against them, and there's no understanding of what it is or what they should be doing. So, yeah, pretty frustrating. Now, I've kind of rushed through that bit because I think the actual meat of what we really want to talk about is this. So we have had a look now at the SEC's playbook, if you will. We, over the course of however many suits that they have brought to pass, and now understand there are 67 cryptocurrencies that they have deemed as a security. which is interesting because there's 25,000 cryptocurrencies out there. Gary Gensler's only stated the only one that is safe, is Bitcoin. No other one is safe at the moment. So does that mean that the 24,932 that are still remaining are just up their sleeves, or is this 67 just a pretty good flavor of where they're going to be, and they've really narrowed in on these 67? Sadly, I don't think the latter is the case. But I brought this article up because I think it's worth us just running through some of the big ones there, because some of these ones may actually be ones that you want to have in your portfolio, or you may have in your portfolio. There are a couple that are in mine. So in the Binance one, so we're just down here, 10 were introduced. So BNB, BUSD, we already knew about that one with Paxos, Solana, Cardano, Polygon, Cosmos, Sandbox, Decentraland, Axie Infinity, and Coty. Sorry, I didn't mention Coty earlier. And then Coinbase, they named 13 cryptocurrencies. Some of them were the same, but there were some new ones. So we had Solana, Cardano, Polygon, the Sandbox, Axie Infinity, and then on top of that, we had Chiliz, Flow, Internet Computer, Near Protocol, that's one near to my heart, so that's interesting, Voyager Token, and Nexos. But you're thinking, well, okay, well, that's only 19. So where are the rest? Well, we know XRP. That court case has been going on bang on nearly 3 years now, and they've still not resolved that one. There's library and library credits. That one has been resolved, although it's kind of going back in for appeal at the moment. But that is one that the SEC effectively won. Algorand is a big one there. Again, when they raised their charges against, I think it was Kraken. God, there's so many of them, it's hard to keep track. They singled out Algorand. Bittrex. There you go. Should have just carried on reading the sentence. But if we scroll down here, here's the actual list. So I'm not going to read through all 67 of them because it would just take a while. I'll post this article. You can go in there and have a look. I mean, some of the ones, Tron's on the list. Terra, Luna is there. I don't think there's any big ones that we haven't really mentioned, like big ones. I don't Dash, I suppose, is there. But yeah, so there's 67. And again, they're using the Howey test as an understanding of how they get that. Now, as you saw in that little clip, the Howey test was actually introduced in 1946 as a way of determining a security. Now, obviously, cryptocurrencies weren't around then, so that's the whole point, is that the cryptocurrency argument is, well, wait a second, it's a completely new asset class. I don't think you should be using a test that at the time when it was pulled together, nobody even conceived this was coming. Now, whether or not that's a decent argument, I'm not so sure, because maybe you're then just opening up the door for them to come up with an even stricter test. But what we've got is a four-pronged approach. Now, you have to satisfy all four of these elements, or these prongs, and if you do, then it is a security. So the first one is an investment of money in a common enterprise. Third one, with an expectation of profit, and then 4, to be derived from the efforts of other. So all 4 conditions must be met, and the test can only be applied retrospectively, which is never good, but it is where it is. Now, give you a little visualization of how that looks. Might be a little bit easier to kind of see. And this is actually a fairly decent article, so I will post this one. I'm not going to bother reading through it, but it breaks it down in quite a lot of detail. So if you're ever just wanting to understand the Howey a little bit more, then it's worth going into there. But from having a skim through the complaints and just trying to identify. So before I go through the list that I've written down, what I will say is they, just because they've listed 10 cryptos on the Binance one, it doesn't mean that they've identified all the things I'm going to talk about for each of those 10. I've just kind of picked the common thread. So instead of just going, okay, in BNB, this is what they found is the problem. In Matic, they found this is the problem. I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to pick what are the general themes, and then you guys, if you really want to, have a look in it. But the main issues that the SEC are identifying within the complaint of why they are securities boils down to, if they were raised as an ICO, then that's a red flag for them. If too much of the initial token allocation was actually given to the team, then that is another red flag for them. Social media accounts play a huge part in it, particularly for promoting the token, and especially if social media accounts were used. So when I'm talking about social media accounts, I'm talking the Cosmos social media account, the BNB social media account, not some influencer, their actual own social media accounts. So social media accounts used to promote them, but especially when raising awareness that it's a new listing on an exchange. So that seems to be one. Let's have a look. I can't even read my own writing. Smart contracts. So smart contracts is another one. They identify whether or not there's a thought that you're adding something to it. So there's now an expectation of profits from that, especially from work done from others. Team referring to similarities. I don't know what. I can't read the end of my writing. So yes, shame on me for that one there. I'll come back to that one. But the biggest one, and probably the biggest shock, is a fee burning mechanism, deflationary tokens, because there is an expectation of profit from that because supply is shrinking, it's deflationary. And so you would expect then that the remaining tokens will go up. So that is another big one that's been announced there. Now, what is amazing is if you think about those 67 tokens that have been identified, or the 23 tokens identified across the two suits that came out this week. Granted, there's some overlap. The second biggest crypto out there, and the biggest altcoin out there, Ethereum, has still not been mentioned. Now, I think everyone assumed that the next big thing that was going to come out from the SEC was going to be an Ethereum case, and it hasn't. And I don't really know how to read that, if I'm honest. I don't know. Are they thinking it's so decentralized that it's safe and it's happy and it doesn't pass the Howey test, and so it's not a security? Or if our experience with the SEC is anything to go by, actually they're just waiting to drop the Ethereum separate one later, and maybe that's what they're going to do. Maybe they're trying to wait for how the XRP, the Ripple case comes out, and if that's a big thumbs up, Ripple lose, and that just gives the SEC the confidence, but also the what's the word I'm probably looking for? I don't know. My mind's gone blank. But if it gives them certainly the confidence, and if it gives them the, what is it, the word I'm looking for, where it's happened in the past and they can refer back to it, so then they can go forward with others. Then maybe that's when they're going to wait to drop the Ethereum, so they don't want to burn it just yet. But I think we've got to bear that one in mind, because let's face it, Ethereum had an ICO. Yeah, it's deflationary now thanks to EIP 1529, I think. And going back to some of the other ones, when it was first launched, the team got loads of tokens at the beginning. So, you could argue that a lot of the big red flags that were identified in the previous ones are massive for Ethereum as well. So I think that's, it's definitely something that we've just got to precedent. Thank you, precedent. There we go. Who said chat on YouTube was a waste of time? Establishing the precedent. Thank you, guys. So yeah, I don't know where the Ethereum side's going to be at the moment. What I will be saying is, I'll tell you what, the SEC must be recruiting like nobody's business, because, as I said, and they must have just reams of cash, because 2.5 years for Ripple and that's still not sorted. Binance, Coinbase, going after these guys as well. That's going to be tied up in, huge amounts of fees, legal teams, and the time it takes. I don't think any of these will be, okay, well, we filed the lawsuit and, we'll have an answer in a month's time. No, I think we'll still be talking about this in the next bull run. As a matter of fact, hey, maybe we heard it here first. Maybe that's the kind of news at the end of the next bull run, which leads to the end of the start of the next bear cycle. I don't know. But these things take an awful long time to play out. So definitely something to bear in mind. I don't know. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts, gals, if there are any, on the two suits? You know, price action aside, I put in the poll. You know, do you think Binance and Coinbase are just going to give up on the US and move on? Do we think it's as severe as that? You know, is it something that you're now worried about? You know, you think, oh, Binance might be over. I mean, I personally, I'm not really too bothered. One, I don't use Coinbase, but the hypocrisy of them, you know, now going after Coinbase after approving them only 2 years ago and saying that they were, you know, the right company, is amazing. And Binance, you know, it's a separate entity, Binance US. So, and Binance is, I think, what we've shown over the last sort of 6 to 9 months is that crypto is not dependent on the US anymore, and that's a shame for the US. And yes, it may have a short-term implication on price, but ultimately, in terms of killing crypto, no, I don't think it will. So yeah, I think it's there. I'll have a look through the chat and just see what everyone's put. Just bear with me. VIX is looking bearish for stonks. Well, we can have a look at that momentarily. I think it was at 14 last time I saw it, which is crazy. Mr. Taco's debt ceiling hasn't been raised yet. It's actually been suspended. You're right. So can't quite go as you say. And I think they've actually, and I've not gone through the negotiations and what the deal is, but I think a lot of the things that Biden had promised, things like writing off the student debt, I think the Republicans are like, you want us to sign on to suspending the debt ceiling, you need to get rid of that. So there's a lot of things that maybe they had planned to spend money on that they're actually now going to have to not do. And that's where they're going to try and find this money to last the next year and a half or however long it's going to be. We'll have a look at how often the debt ceiling is raised. Just because they said 2025 is the next time they'll look at it, if they need to, trust me, they will look at it before then. And there's been times where every couple of months they've been having to raise it. So this 10 is almost identical to OKX. Yeah, it's very similar. I seen you sort of mention that before, Bijan, and you're right. It's uncanny that they have mentioned those. Whether that is just because they are some of the better ones or not, I honestly have no idea. I suppose I'm just trying to understand in my head why it would make a difference. Because if OKX are saying okay to it, then anyone that had it and was stupid enough to leave it on exchange could just open an account on OKX and move it over to there. But yeah, it's odd that so many were on there. Mr. Tacker's waiting to set a precedent. Okay, yeah, we're getting to the precedent bits because I couldn't remember my words. I think it's a sneaky little attack on Hong Kong and China. Well, do you know, it's interesting, isn't it? We talked about the Chinese invasion a few months back, and we were talking about end of May when retail was going to be allowed, and obviously 1st of June, and I haven't really heard anything about it. Granted, you know, this news is, I've not even bothered looking at any other news in terms of cryptocurrency, and I wasn't expecting suddenly 40k the next day, but I was hoping that it was going to open the doors a little bit more. So again, you know, we'll probably have to wait a few weeks and then maybe go onto the on-chain data and have a look at new wallets established and all that kind of stuff and see whether or not that has helped. Ryan's put, hopefully this all means the incoming sales to pick up your favorite cryptos at a cheap price. Yeah, absolutely. I bought on Monday, bought some more DOT, bought some more Link, bought some more NEAR, and bought some more Bitcoin, which I hadn't bought Bitcoin for a while because I got in at a really good price, but I just thought it's close to 25k, 25.3. I bought it out 25.4. I was quite happy to do that. But yeah, these are the opportunities to give us to, and we'll have a look at TA a little bit later on. But you know, a big drop like that, a good time to buy. Now, one of the questions is what my portfolio is, so I'll wait there. But all the stuff that I bought was not a short-term play. It was stuff that I was just going to buy, hold, and stake. So that's what I did. Bijan's put, I think the US don't want to lose power as a world reserve currency. Completely agree with that, and see BTC as a threat. This is the best way for them to spread FUD and to lower adoption. Yeah, so this is Operation Chokehold 2.0, and I completely agree. This is all of, even if they don't win, this is about the US drawing a line and saying, we do not support cryptos of any kind. We don't recognize it as a currency, and we're just going to use all of our 3-letter acronymed agencies to just tell the general public how bad, how risky, and how wrong cryptocurrencies are. And so, yeah, you know, I don't know if it's working, but they're certainly going at it. China, Hong Kong forced to play their hand to attract investment. Yeah, it is suspended, so there's no debt ceiling until 2025. Okay. Didn't expect Sand to make both lists. Yeah, they've gone after the metaverse, haven't they? But with Mana and Sand. I'm guessing it creates fear and FUD, bags for potential new buyers in Hong Kong. Very true. If I click on this, what's going to happen? Oh, you're not going to see it. That's all right then. Genza says US dollar is only digital currency we need. Yeah, was it him or was it someone else that was saying we already have digital currency? It is the US dollar. Why do we need anything else? I can't remember if that was him that was on that. It was. He was on a news show. I remember watching the clip now. And he was saying, you know, things like the euro and the yen and all that, they already are digital. But the problem with those is they just get printed into oblivion. But he won't come out and say that. So, you know, interesting 48 hours. Again, a lot for us to get to talk about over the coming months as these start to mature. I'm sorry for American investors over there. I really am. People that are passionate about crypto are really struggling to, you know, have any clarity in where they're going. And the next thing is they're just going to, I mean, they already are trying to screw them over with the taxing, aren't they? I think they're trying to increase the taxing rate for any electricity that's used for Bitcoin mining and all that kind of stuff. So some crazy policies that are being thrown out there. If you were an absolute diehard fan of crypto, you know, you're left with one or two choices: either give up on it or go and move to a really free country. I was going to make a joke and say Canada, but there's no joking about the levels of freedom in Canada these days. So yeah, but we are. It makes actually England, UK, and the EU look like a haven compared. I still think, I do believe that the EU and the UK are taking the right steps. You know, they are trying to bring in regulation. Yes, we still have problems with on and off ramps, but you know, we're not having exchanges gone after. Yes, there's certain things we can and can't do because the FCA deems retail to be too immature to do derivatives and futures trading and all that kind of stuff. So we shouldn't really necessarily do those unless we declare that we are an experienced trader, and then you've got to go for a whole ramification and justification and all that kind of stuff if you do want to try and do that route on likes of Bybit and Binance. So they are trying to make the right steps, and I think over the next you know, months and maybe year or two, we'll start to see it. If not actual regulation come out, we'll start to see a roadmap of what that regulation is going to look like, and that's going to help us no end. Right, okay. EU are coming after us too, I think. Well, they could well be, but I can't remember what it was called. Again, we covered it, but they recently passed a law, didn't they, in their parliament, which was like, it was a 4-letter acronym. And they're now, you know, seriously looking at the regulation side of things. I can't remember what it was. It was a positive step. But of course, they're, you know, and don't get me wrong, all of, you know, the EU, the UK, they're all looking at their own CBDCs as well. So, you know, there's always that to contend with. Right, we'll leave that one where it is. There was one other thing, wasn't there? Of course, was the SEC also filed yesterday was to freeze the cryptocurrencies held by Binance US. So that was, I don't know if that actually went through. I've not seen anything to say that it had, but they asked the federal judge for a temporary restraining order for Binance US. Now, there's lots of then things sort of saying, Gary Gensler was saying that Binance US has a lot of similarities with FTX as well, but as I understand it, and granted, it's not like I know CZ personally, but FTX had no money. They were just pissing around, pretending that they had money. I understand that Binance actually does have the reserves it says it does. Now, say that with 90% certainty because it's crypto, so you don't necessarily know. But CZ was pretty quick, and Binance US, they have been incredibly vocal over the last few hours in terms of where they're going and comment on stuff. One of these ones here, I had it up earlier and it's not there. Basically, where they're just saying, look, guys, don't need to take your money off our exchange. We've got it covered. You can still make withdrawals. We're not freezing anything, and didn't go through. And of course, I didn't bring it up, but the biggest, let's find it. There we go. The biggest indicator that Binance are safe is because Jim Cramer, looking, what's with all these bloody cats? This is why I prep things ahead of time, you see. Bloody hell. He was advocating that everyone needs to take off all of their assets from Coinbase and Binance. He tweeted it somewhere. I can't remember where. I would rather invest in chain letters than some of this garbage he's talking about. Anyway, one of these. So if he's telling you to take your money off, it's safe. Inverse Kramer to the moon. Absolutely. Okay. So that gets to the end of the SEC stuff. A Canadian would never lie to us. Of course they wouldn't. So, so this is where Mr. Tacos, it's interesting, this is Sky News. So for those of you who aren't aware, it's like, I can't stand the BBC, but Sky News UK based media, and there, look, signs critical deal to raise the US debt ceiling. And that's probably just an interesting play on the words there. But signed a critical budget deal to raise the debt ceiling for the US, saving the country from falling into unprecedented default. The failure to make debt repayments. The US signed the bill in private at the White House on Saturday, probably because he was still tired. Bless him, man. Sorry, do you know what? I don't really follow US politics. I just can't stand the guy. Not because he is creepy, sniffs young girls' hair and all sorts of stuff, but his policies, the way he does it, just the way he acts, he is clearly suffering from either Alzheimer's or dementia, and I just feel that this guy should be retired at 84, 86, whatever he is. He's saying he's going to do another 4 more years, but I can't see it. Anyway, back to this. The Treasury Department had warned that the country would start running shortcasts on Monday, which would have sent shockwaves through the US and global economies. The US debt limit stands at 31.4 trillion. I mean, they just throw it out there as if it's, 31.4 trillion is absolutely fine. And raising will ensure the government has enough to borrow its debts. Weeks of standoff between the Republicans and the Democrats, yep. And the agreement was eventually passed, which suspends, you see, there we go. We talked about raise. And then we get it actually here, which suspends the debt limit until 2025, but also restricts government spending. And I'm sure you can go through and find out all of the different things that they have restrictions on. But yeah, that's where that one is. So why do we talk about it? Well, you can actually go and have a look at how many times the debt ceiling has been raised. And it's a lot. I mean, this table doesn't go back to 1917 when the debt ceiling started. It actually only starts from 1940. And these are in billions of dollars. And so, back in the day, it was raised and lowered. After World War II, you'd expect that. Country needed rebuilding. Then it went years without needing anything. And then again, and I imagine during Vietnam, this is happening all the time now. War seems to be a prime reason for why they need to raise it. So pretty much every year from the beginning of the 60s all the way through to, I don't know when the Vietnam War ended, but sometime in the 70s. And then, yeah, I'm not going to labor the point, but we get a bit closer to our time, and certainly when Bitcoin came around in 2009, and we can kind of see These are billions again, remember? So we had nearly 800 billion there, and then a few months later, just another 300 billion, and then a few months later after that, it was another 2 trillion. Then we had at least a decency to wait, and I say we, America had the decency to wait 2 years to ask for another 2 trillion. But it's all right, guys, because they suspended the actual look at it on for the 4th of Feb 2013, but just only waited a couple more months before adding another 300 billion. So yeah, figures are all going there, and you can kind of see, and then, you know, some incredible numbers. So this was Biden when he came in, and everything you need to do, 6.5 trillion, you know, it just rolls off the tongue, that no problem whatsoever. 6.5 trillion in one go. And then, you know, so actually, well, let's look at it this way. In 2021, they raised the debt ceiling by nearly 10 trillion in the space of a year, not even the year, in the space of 6 months, $10 trillion, which is utterly crazy. Takes it to where we are now. Why are we talking about the debt ceiling? You know, I mean, it's suspended, raised, however you want to use it. They can spend more money, basically, is where we're at. Why is it important? Well, I've gone through and had a look at a few of these for us, and we can kind of see, not every time, and you got to be, you know, you got to have a look. But I've gone back to the Great Crash, and what I've done here is I've put it in red because there was so many raises of the ceilings just trying to save the economy. So obviously this one went down as they were trying to print more money to put it back into the market to provide confidence. But what we can see is, I'm not going to bother cutting between the two, but just to say that I found the month that it happened in. It doesn't matter about the value. I've just put the month in, and then I've just put a horizontal line on here. And generally, increase in the debt season, this is the S&P 500, by the way, typically means that if it's not an immediate move, it's a move fairly soon after, that the markets are going to climb, and we're going to start to see risk on assets increasing again. Now, as I say, that doesn't always happen. We had in March 15, actually it's pretty flat, and then it fell away. But by the time March 17 came around, you know, big increase again. March 19, we ran out of money, big increase again. COVID happened, obviously, and we saw the rally there. And then end of 2021, we actually, interestingly, that one saw a decent rally. But this one, despite everything, I think that was what, 2.5 trillion there, fell away. And then that's 2022 for us as it happened. But what can we see now? We've been on a steady increase. This is the 1st of May. It's a monthly chart here. So this might be too small for you guys. Let me zoom in. But you know, typically 9 times out of 10, we've seen that actually this leads to risk on assets continuing to climb. So will that now be the case for where we sit at the moment? People are always going to say, you know, the global macroeconomic picture is different and there is a mass recession on the horizon. Yes, there is a potential for that. And I still think that is the case. But what has, you know, 5 years ago I would have never thought like this, but now is, you know, I can quite easily see people just printing more money to ensure that a recession doesn't happen and just kicking that can a little bit further down the road. It just feels like at the moment we're so numb to being, you know, just printing more money there that they'll just do that and, you know, oh, look, our economy's still strong, it's still healthy, we've still got all the jobs, everything else, and they'll change the definition of a recession again, and suddenly, you know, it just won't happen. And then before you know it, we're back off to the races. So at the moment, whilst it's in my mind that may well happen, it doesn't actually affect what I'm doing right now. And should that start to manifest itself a bit closer to the time, and may have to eat a bit of humble pie and change my plan. But right now, I'm just going on where we're at. Now, why have I put this orange line on here? The orange line is a sort of a representation of when the next BTC halving is. And so, you know, are we going to see, I mean, a climb into this, and then we know what happens after previous halvings. You know, Bitcoin continues to fly up. Okay, granted, this is the S&P 500 chart. It's just a visual representation. But there's a potential there for it to have a look at it. And I didn't put this one on, but as Mr. Tacos pointed out, let's change the color of that one. this red line is, and between now and then is how long we've got for them. This debt ceiling is suspended, so they've got all that time to, okay, they've got to meet some restrictions and everything else, but I'm sure there's ways around those. And then let's not also forget that there's a presidential election at the end of 2024, and the inauguration is in January of 2025. We might have an entirely new party running the country. We could have a completely Democrats come in. We could have a new new president from the Democrats. So yeah, that's something to bear in mind. And that actually leads me on to something I was thinking about whilst I was away in America. Because I was in Florida, and the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis, he went on Twitter to announce his running for presidency. Now, he's always been thought of as a bit of a fan of cryptocurrencies, and certainly the people in Florida think he's God's gift, because he banned CBDCs from coming into law within Florida. Now, someone said to me that isn't actually true, and he just said that it wouldn't be recognized as money or something. So I'm not really too sure where that necessarily sits. But on his Twitter thing, he kind of made some random comments about you just do Bitcoin, and Biden will kill Bitcoin and stuff like that, which maybe we're taken out of context. Maybe that's not quite what he meant, but it kind of said to a lot of the Bitcoin maxis, well, actually, you know what? Maybe he doesn't know as much as he thinks he knows about it. Why am I rambling on about that? Because he's nominated himself to be a presidential candidate. Now, likely the other, what will happen is there'll be a whole ream of Republican presidential candidates, and then one will be put forward. At the moment, there's him. And has Trump announced? Does anyone know if Trump's announced? I'm not sure. I know he was thinking about it. So maybe it might be between him and Trump. Well, Trump's not particularly a fan of Bitcoin. He doesn't like it. He's a fan of the US dollar. He doesn't. So, So what I'm saying is, at the moment, we've got a Democratic Party in the United States that are creating the policies. Just because we may have a change doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be an automatic switch in narrative. So if Trump gets in and he's still anti-cryptos, we may see that's the case. Now, on the other side of things, we know that Biden is not a fan of cryptocurrencies. We know, people he's appointed, Janet Yellen, Gary Gensler, who are running things over there in terms of legislation and rules and guidance. The SEC, so a pinch of salt after what we talked about. They've been appointed by Biden, and Gary Gensler's, I think, runs out in 2026. I think that's when his appointment ends. So if it's another Democratic president, and if it's still Biden, and he may look to keep Gary Gensler. Now, Gary Gensler may move on to other things, but it's likely that he will then replace the head of the SEC with someone who's also anti-cryptocurrency, and take it that way. But there is another Lib Dem, bloody hell, I don't know where that came from, Democratic presidential candidate who has sort of appeared, and that is, I was going to say Robert Downey Jr. as well. I'm really struggling. Is Robert Kennedy Jr. So obviously he had JFK, and then he had his brother RFK, both of them assassinated. Well, RFK's son, he has said that he would like to be a presidential candidate for the Democrats, and he is very pro cryptocurrency. He's very pro Bitcoin. He's very anti large conglomerate organizations. You can imagine, after the alleged assassination of his uncle by the CIA and all that kind of stuff. So he even spoke at Bitcoin Miami conference, and he spoke about what Bitcoin is and how powerful it is and why it's needed. And so, we could have it that maybe the Democrats do win, but they go with a different presidential candidate, and it's someone that's very pro Bitcoin. And then suddenly these people in positions at the moment, like Janet Yellen and Gary Gensler, get replaced with people who are very pro cryptocurrency. And then do we see a lot of these lawsuits then just fall away? Do we see the doors immediately reopen to try and bring exchanges and try and bring cryptocurrency projects back to the United States and try and make them the center? We just don't know. But we are coming into an interesting time over the next 18 months of just where the people of power are going to be and where they're going to come from and what their attitude is towards it. And I think, although it's a long way off, maybe it's something to just sort of factor in where we see that next bull run. We should be into a bull run in 2025 when the new president or the old president gets re-sworn back in. I'll stop talking now. Trump announced ages ago. Okay, there we go. Thanks, Chris. See, that's how finger on the pulse I am with American politics. Ryan, I don't think that the US national debt will just continue going up and up and up until the system fails. I agree with you. It's a bit like, I would say for us, we'll never get rid of the NHS. It's bleeds money, it's completely inefficient and everything else, but it's political suicide for any government to suggest that they're going to abolish the NHS and go private. And similarly, if as noble as it would be for a president to go, you know what, I'm making a stand here, we're not raising the debt ceiling, we've got to go into a period of significant austerity, it just won't last too long. So yeah. Okay. Let's have a look. Just making sure I've covered everything. Okay, there's another one. China exports down by 7.5%. Okay, cheers, Bijan. Right, let's go into. That was an hour. Jesus. Let's go into the questions. And I'll show you. There's quite a lot here, so I'll try and go through them as best I can. Not every right winger likes BTC. I know, shocking, isn't it? Especially when you think about a lot of the Senate hearings we've seen when Gary Gensler got grilled for 2 days solid. It felt like every single Senate was talking about BTC and the importance of cryptocurrencies. It's a lot of fans. There's also a lot of fans on the Democrat side. So I think it's bi-party, but unfortunately, it's the cabinet or whatever the equivalent of that is in America at the top that is really going to pull the strings. Doesn't matter how many backbenchers you have that support it. If they don't have any power to influence the government's decision, then how's that really going to help? But yeah, right. Thoughts on Carver? Yeah, we'll have a look at that. Thoughts on Bifrost? The very last Avenger call. I like Bifrost. I've actually started buying some of it. And it's a liquid staking protocol, but Chris, I'm not going to talk about it because the last Avenger call I did, I spent 45 minutes talking about it. So if you just go onto Vimeo, or you can actually just go onto YouTube and have a look at it. It's this one here with the beautiful picture of Thor on it. And then if you go into it, 52 minutes in, or actually 49 minutes in, that's where I talk about it. And I talk about it there you go. I talk about it for 40 minutes. So fill your boots there. My thoughts on it. I like it. I like it a lot. And I've started buying it. So yeah, I'm happy to. For me, at the time I did it recording, it's only had a $4 million market cap. So it was one of those ones where if it does what it says it can do, and it's got the power of Polkadot behind it, and then it starts to onboard the likes of Atom. I mean, it's already got Ethereum and a few of the others. When it starts getting on some of these other chains, then I see it can be a real big play in the next bull cycle. Because when the next bull cycle hits, every degen will want to try and stake everything that they can for however high yield they possibly can. I'm not personally going to be using the platform because we kind of all got caught out on that the last time, but I'll happily hold the token, which will go up in value because of it. And so, yeah, I'd see this one as potentially being a really big X if it pays off, but it might not. So it's only got a small percentage of my portfolio. So yeah, Chris, I'm sorry I didn't answer your question directly, but my thoughts on it is it's good, and there's a 40-minute video there. John's asked about Ethereum naming services. The project has been making a lot of new features, i.e. name mapping, subnames with parent options, can host websites using FPS, signing with Ethereum, partnered with Shopify, which will help ENS global adoption in e-commerce. What are my thoughts on it? Thoughts on buying the ETH addresses, and thoughts on the token. Some good questions there. So I do actually know about Ethereum naming service, ENS, when it sort of was first talked about, first came out, probably beginning of just prior to like the major bull cycle of 2020. And I remember watching some influencers sort of saying, look, this is it here. You know, when crypto's mass adopt, you can now buy web addresses, and you could search through it, choose a web address, buy it. And then his view was you buy Google, as you've said there, .eth. And then when crypto is absolutely mainstream, Google are going to come along to you cap in hand and offer you $5,000 to buy that handle off you again. And there's definitely a possibility of doing that. All I'd say is I've not bothered going, oh, sorry, let's get CoinMarketCap up so everyone knows what we're talking about. We won't do that. I've not gone through the list to know what's still available. But if you find one that may, I don't know if things like fried or vegan or whatever, things that perhaps in 2020 weren't as big as they necessarily are now, and maybe you'll come across names that it might be worth taking, or new companies that are coming along. But it is, let's not mistake ourselves. I'm answering your second question first here. That is, it's effectively, it is a gamble, because you've got to, and it's a long-term play. You're going to be holding a name. So for however many years it is until crypto reaches that mass adoption stage where everybody wants in it, then that company is still operating or operating under that name, and that they have to move into the .eth rather than .co.uk or whatever they previously had, and that they then approach you. So there's a lot of ifs there. Now, back when it first started, it was like $60 for 10 years. So, it wasn't a lot of money. But if you're having to buy it off someone now for you to hold it, you might be paying 10 times that. So that's, it's not something I'm personally going to do. So this is it. This is the chart. But I wanted to go onto the website. Oops. Why has that not done it? Why is it not? Come on. ENS. So this is what it looks like. And yeah, you can go through your launch your app, search for a name. Harry.eth. It's already registered. Okay, let's go. Come on. Throw some names in the chat and we'll have a look. Superman. Already gone. Avengers. Here you go. The realistic trader. Maybe Simon will end up buying it off you. It's already registered. Somebody's already taken it. So, so you just have to go through and maybe find one that's not registered and you can buy it. Right, but let's actually talk about what ENS is, because that's only one part of it. I actually think that there is an element of ENS I actually really like. So, for those of you that have, been around crypto long enough to have noticed, you might go onto Twitter or YouTube, or you'll see someone in Discord and they'll have their name .eth. And you might be like, what the hell does that even mean? Well, so what ENS allows it to do, and this isn't a research token, so I'm not like going into the massive details behind it. I'm going to break this down in the simplest manner I can to try and answer this question quickly. But when you have an Ethereum wallet, that you have two addresses, whether or not you realize you do. You got your public address and you got your private address. Now your private address is what you use to withdraw that. Your public address is what everyone can see, and that's where money can be sent, or Ethereum can be sent to you. But that is, anywhere from 32 to 64 alphanumeric character. And it's not exactly the easiest thing, one, to remember, or two, to give to someone, especially if you're, across the cash register trying to explain this. So what ENS has come up with is a system of creating a database where you can register your public address, and you effectively swap it for a name, whatever the name is, .eth. So now when you go to, I know your friend wants to send you something, instead of you going, okay, yeah, you got your pen and paper ready, it's 032, no, wait a second, it's not 0, it's O32E, capital T, H. You don't have to do that anymore. You can go, I'm just alice.eth. And then what would happen is that they would just type in that address, was that, alice.eth. You'd have to be connected to this platform, obviously. And they just hit press send, and they just send the transaction as if they would. What would actually happen, though, is that the person that is trying to send the money would interface. They don't know it's happening. It does it automatically. Interface with this database, this record that it was. It would find out what the address is for alice.eth is, and then it would just auto fill it with the actually correct public address that you've got. So there's no hassle for them. There's no hassle for you to remember it, and it's all been stored there. And although it is decentralized, it's no risk. Even if a hacker gets that data, the data, it's not your private key. They can't withdraw that. They can just send you stuff. So I really like the idea of that, and that's why you see people running around with this name. Let's have a look. Signkid .eth. Let's have a look, shall we? Siam Kid. It's in a grace period. Someone just gone and got it. You see, look, it expired. If it isn't extended before this date, it will become available. So maybe Sim took it out and then doesn't look to extend it yet. Let's put any subnames on it. It's taking a while to load up. No. Okay. So I kind of like that that idea behind what it's doing. As I say, when it came out, it seemed like a good idea. I never bothered doing it myself. I don't necessarily see the need, but in reality, maybe it is worth it. Now, what I would be interested, and maybe I'll have a look at just how much it costs to register it for a year. I would hate for it to cost you 1 ETH to register it. This is just a screenshot, thankfully. But yeah, something to have a look at. To go back to your other question. So, what are my thoughts on it? Hey, I think it's a great idea. From a person-to-person point of view, I think it's a great idea. In terms of the large corporations, large companies needing it, I mean, yeah, I get that. But as I understand it, this takes 30 seconds, shall we say, to carry out that transaction. Whereas, this I haven't done the full research, so don't ask me what the abbreviation is. The current system that everybody uses, which is DNS, it takes a fraction of a second. So this is a lot slower than the current system, and so it's not really disrupting anything. So, and then why would large companies move away from the current system if this isn't point where it's disrupting it yet? So I'm not sure it's there. In terms of the actual token, I have no idea what the purpose of this token is. Why do you need an ENS token? Because if I'm paying in Ethereum to buy my ETH address, what is the actual point of holding ENS? So I don't know what the purpose is. I tried to have a look on the website. I thought, I'll check out what the tokenomics are on the white paper, because that seems like a good idea. So you go to the white paper. I mean, maybe there's a tokenomics section in here, but scrolling through it, I couldn't find one. If it was a full-on research token, maybe I would have read through it in a bit more detail. But, I want to see a tokenomics section. I couldn't find one. Don't know anything about the tokenomics side of things. But to me, I don't see the point of why this needs to be a token. So I won't be allocating anything towards it. In terms of, when it first launched, look at that, 74. Beautiful. It's now 9. So, it's down 90%, 85% or so. So, if you believe in it, if you want to buy it, it has held this price for a very long time, So this is a fairly decent floor. Doesn't mean it won't fall further, obviously. But for me, yeah, I'm not necessarily rushing to buy this. I don't know if I will get a .eth address. I just don't think I need one, to be honest. But what I would hate is someone to take Harry Harrigan or whatever, and then suddenly everyone start using them. I'm like, I could have had that. But yeah. So if any of you go to buy Harry Harrigan, don't think that you can blackmail me with it. I'll just go with a different name. Harry's not my real name anyway. Right. So hopefully that one answers that for you, John, if John's even on the call. Thoughts on recent CAS price action and chances of Binance listing in the next few months, and an update on your current portfolio. Okay. Well, whilst I was away, I saw that Siam, pregnant pause for effect, has got out of CAS now. So there's probably your initial answer on where my price action thoughts on it were. So I didn't bother digging it up. But I posted a few weeks ago, probably about a month ago, on Discord, where I saw CAS ultimately ending up down, and I sort of identified that my buy zone would be in and around, if I was considering buying, here, this level. And that hasn't really changed. You know, for me, major hype of it going up, but what have we seen at the moment is just lower high and lower low, lower high and lower low. The trend has not broken. The market's not looking great. For me, you know, I could it even get down to here? Absolutely. You know, all of these levels could be targets. I think what I did, let's see, I can't remember where I ran it from, so that was it. That was what I must have drawn. So that's kind of where I'm looking. That was why I identified that. I mean, we're sitting on the 0.5 at the moment. Yeah, we just briefly touched through it, but you know, clear. I mean, all of these 786, the 618 played nicely. Went all the way down to 382, but straight through, to be fair, and that's the 618. Found a bit of support at the moment on the 0.5, but I don't trust that's going to hold. I'm still not convinced with Casper. I know it's a golden token for Siam at the moment, and look, if it pays off, it pays off. I just because someone says they're going to do something, it's not enough for me to invest a significant amount of my portfolio within it. I want to see action, and still is pretty slow. You know, we talked about this before. You know, it claims it's going to be the fastest proof of work. Well, that's great, but if Solana and everyone else is pumping out 50,000 transactions per second and we're still stuck on 8 or whatever it is, you know, does it necessarily matter? Okay, you may get to 400 once it does the Rust upgrade, but it's still no major competitor, and it's just not being used enough for me, and that's the problem. You know, a lot of these other ones we talk about, you know, payment systems, and we've talked about RSR and a few others in the past, and you know, they have, you know, they're focused very much in either like Africa or South America, and they have, you know, thousands of outlets that accept it. Casper at the moment has 10 shops across the world. That's it. So it needs to do a lot of work. Yeah, Jonathan Sublinski, I think he's a very intelligent person. He obviously knows what he's doing, but there's plenty of intelligent people with good products that still don't make it. So that's, again, it's not enough. So I'm still sat on the sideline. I'll be honest, even if it got to 1, I probably wouldn't buy. I'd be happy to miss this one. And you know, if you guys, you know, make an absolute killing on it, then good on you. But I would certainly wait until the trend has broken. At the moment, you know, forget fibs, forget anything else, forget support and resistance. Don't worry about that right now. Until you get out, until it makes a higher high and a higher low, I wouldn't necessarily be interested. Now, you could argue that maybe we're turning it around. You know, okay, well, I want to see it break 2, come back down and stay above 1.4. You know, that's what it needs to do. At the moment, I'm still thinking this is heading that way. And a retest of here. But anyway, that's where I am. In terms of my portfolio, I haven't like properly updated, but just to give you an idea of, so I was probably about 75% in the market. I'm down to about 50 now. I'll explain my logic. I sold basically tokens over the last 3 weeks that I couldn't stake. So things like my Quant has gone. I've sold some of my OKB, although I have kept that one because that's the one that's actually had quite a decent uptick. You know, have a look in a moment. Because I'm not staking it, it felt like the risk to reward of holding it, you know, in a downtrend wasn't quite there. Whereas the likes of Glimmer and Near and Dot, which I am staking, and I've been staking Dot now for 6 months. You know, large amount for 6 months. My staking rewards over that 6 months is coming up on nearly 500 free Dot. So that's pretty impressive. And yeah, okay, at $5, I am under. I think my average buy-in was 530. But that 500 Dot is helping bring that average buy down. And I bought some 2 days ago again, you know, at $5. So I'll keep on doing that. And I can see the benefit of holding on to the ones that I'm staking. But I kind of sold the others. Some I managed to get out on top, like OKB, because it advised. The Quant stuff, I sold just under. It was like I bought at like 120. I sold at 118, so I made a small loss there. But I was just trying to refocus. So to answer your question, what I actually have, still got all my BTC, not sold any of that. Bought a little bit more on Monday. Got all my Dot. That's staking away, and that's on a long-term stake. It takes me 28 days to unstake it. Excuse me. Still got my I'm going to call it L1, but it's not. I haven't actually staked that. I don't know why I didn't sell it. I have to have a look at that. I don't know why I didn't sell it. Well, I still got it. Still got my Glimmer, still got my Link, still got my Matic, still got my Near, still got some OKB, bit of Rose, and then I've also got Bifrost. And that should really be in here now because I've actually bought it. But everything else is gone. Actually, that's not true. I got a tiny bit of Pepe left. But I've sold the majority of that, and I got left holding the bag. So we talked about meme coins before I went away, and I went and put, I think, $200 into Ribbit. It's now worth $27. So just don't. I can't even be bothered paying the gas fees to sell it. So I've just kept that. So yes, that's where my portfolio is, and it's about 50%. I'm in. So I got 50% to play with on whatever the market's going to do. But we'll go. Well, no, I'll save the price action bit for a little bit later on. I'm absolutely happy. You know, my BTC is fine. It's all in profit. My Dot's underwater. Actually, all my alts are underwater. I'll be honest, except for Quant. Sorry, I can't get that right. Except for OKB, but I don't factor in what. Because I've just got a very simple spreadsheet, so I've not factored in what the staking rewards are for that. So some of them might actually be slightly in profit, like Dot, and others might be still at break even. But I'm just happy to build that position. I feel completely comfortable doing that. I know others are more than happy to wait and try and catch the falling knife. And yeah, that's where we are. Interested to hear your thoughts on Link BTC, ADA BTC, and Dot BTC charts, and possibly swapping some spot BTC into blue chip alts with a view for converting back into BTC at a later date. Good question, Chris. And you know what? I made a silly mistake when I sold my Quant, because where's my BTC charts? I'm sure I had them. Yeah, there we go. So let me just zoom in. So this is Quant. I bought my Quant in BT. I bought it with USD, but at the time its BTC value was down here. I don't know exactly where it was. Anyway, I didn't even think about converting it to BTC. I just sold it straight away for US dollars and took a little bit of a dollar hit. But actually, had I have looked at this chart, I should have sold it into BTC, and I actually would have made more BTC than I could have done if I'd bought it originally at that price. So yeah, there's a bit of an oversight there. In my head, I kind of justified it as, well, I'm going to be buying back into Quant. So it's not like I'm getting towards the end where I'm trying to turn all my altcoins into BTC. But I just didn't look. I didn't think. I was on holiday. You know, I got 5 minutes break and plugging in my Trezor, and I just quickly sold it. So I should have done that there, because, you know, you're right. The altcoins versus BTC, most of them are historic lows, and where that doesn't necessarily mean you should be converting everything to alts now, ready to swap it over, because there's still plenty of falling potential available. At some stage, we are going to have that swing back up. The bull market's going to come, and these what seem like incredibly low BTC values in whatever alt it is are going to skyrocket. They always do. Doesn't guarantee for every single altcoin, don't get me wrong, but they're going to climb very high, and so you're going to be able to get in an opportunity. So whilst I'm not saying you should be potentially buying it now, you should certainly get into your cycle of looking at things, of taking into account BTC pair charts and just seeing where they are, because there's going to be some juicy ones to get your hands into. But you asked about ADA, you asked about DOT, and you asked about Link. So ADA, I mean, just look at it. This will be the same for every single one you've mentioned, by the way. The prices just continue to fall. That downtrend we've talked about. Yeah, we're retesting where we were back in March at the moment. So there's potential for us to see a bounce. But, I'm having to scroll back now to where we were in 2020, 2021 to try and find some sort of like levels of price support. And, I haven't done a fib, but I'm just saying there's a chunk in and around here. I've got to just stop it there so I can pull it across. For me, there's no guarantee it's going to stop there, but there's a decent enough bit of action for it to come back round, and that didn't hold, then I'd be looking kind of around that level. Now, how do we draw a fib on this one? I mean, we're going to have to go from here, aren't we? Here up to there, really. Have a look, how's that play? I mean, this one, definitely had some play in between there. Obviously hit that top because we stopped it. Kind of worked nicely there. Maybe not. Does it go down to 0.0000936? Potentially it will. But what? Let's just get rid of those for a second. And let's just, because ADA's old enough that we can have a look at what it did in the last bull. So actually, I'm just going, let me just put this onto the weekly chart, and then we can make this a little bit cleaner for you to look at. So what we can see here is the last previous bull run in 2018. Huge spike for ADA in BTC value. And then we saw it fall away. So where did it get to? Where did it close on the weekly? Closed here. It's pretty much the same level that it got back to in the 2021 bull run. And what did we see happen? We saw that huge fall from there down to 92% fall. But from a 92%, it still managed to recover it all back. And so, getting in at those historic lows down here in 2019, 2020, and you ride that up, and I don't know what that is, 15x from there. I think it is. Okay, maybe like a 13x, but still fairly decent a return. So we haven't come anywhere near that fall yet. And I'm not trying to draw a parallel to say that it's guaranteed it's going to go down to 92. What I'm just trying to say is it has fallen a lot harder in the past, and so it could still, quite easily do that. At the moment, we're down 80%. 92 takes us, back down to that same level. So, don't be put off by what you're seeing, especially if you're on the sidelines. Never need to rush in to do anything in crypto, but just have a look at where it is. And if you are thinking about, actually, I want to convert some stuff I already hold, the problem is if you're still holding it, chances are, you bought it in terms of BTC value somewhere up here, so you're in the red. But yeah, I certainly will be. I've talked about this before. Looking when I do sell in the next bull run to moving it into BTC, and I'll be using this chart more than the USD. I have to use the USD initially to get my position into buy because I'm sat in cash, or I was. But what I've been doing on my logs I don't really want to bring it up because it's not censored. But everyone always puts, time they bought it and the price that they bought it at. Well, I have another column for what at that exact moment was the equivalent value in BTC. So just so I can have an understanding of roughly where it was. And so I can kind of see, but I have to still buy in at USD value because, I'm in cash at the moment. That's the only way to do it. So yeah, back to those levels. I mean, so 1221, does it go down to 1130 and does it even go down to 900? I could see those levels. I really can. You wanted DOT. I mean, DOT's in an unprecedented period now. Ignore this first level there because that was just its listing. It was always going to fly up, but it's taken out this low that it had in January 21 when Bitcoin first moved and altcoins didn't. And so we're in price discovery ultimately. So where it can go from here, I don't necessarily know. But we can see how fast these things move up when altcoins decide to move against BTC. So I'm all right with holding that. In terms of where it can go, I honestly couldn't tell you. Just because there's nothing else really to go from it. This looks ugly. This doesn't look particularly nice. It doesn't even look like it's forming any form of bottoming pattern at the moment. Maybe if this week closes in a green, you might say, well, we've had that bounce there and maybe a bounce there. Is there some sort of W pattern? But remember, they're the weekly charts. But otherwise, yeah, dot versus BTC, very ugly. And yeah, one I'd be sitting on. Link. So again, with Link, it's resting on where we were, about a year ago after FTX and Celsius. But we lose that. We're kind of looking at about 1,500. Really, maybe 1,600. That's the area I'd be talking, which is a huge move from where we currently are. Trying to think, where can I draw it from? Because try and get a maybe. Okay, let's do this one up to there. We know we've broken it. Oh well, look at that. I promise, I swear, everything I hold holy, I didn't predetermine this, but that box and those fib levels just lined up beautifully. So yeah, that's where it could end up going easily. Just see how the market needs to go, and we're gonna have a look at TA on USD value a little bit later on. We've had a few bad days. We're getting some very significant support levels, both psychologically and other TA wise on BTC. So just because we've had a fair few red days, they normally do end up in a decent move back up. So right. Terra Classic still on Binance. Your thought on the chart and the tokens? I will give you my thought on the chart. I'm not even going to bother wasting my time looking at it, Chris. I'll be honest. I don't care for Terra Classic for Luna Classic anymore. What is it doing? As far as I'm concerned, it's a meme coin now. It has no utility. Nobody trusts it. Nobody's using it. Yeah. So it may move, it may pump, but ultimately it will just continue to die. So I'm not going to waste anyone's time by getting a chart up on that. Remy's asked, what signs should you look out for when a crypto project is dying and not coming back? I feel like I'm going to answer that question for you, but I feel like that probably deserves a bit more time on another talk as well. So the biggest red flags for me immediately are significant change in the leadership teams. So if just people are just constantly moving in and out, lack of activity on either GitHub or people posting about different things happening on things like Reddit and stuff like that, not updating their websites or their roadmaps, or not hitting targets on their roadmaps. Big things here: getting delisted from exchanges, and then the other one has to be lack of liquidity. So when you go on to, sorry if this is teaching anyone to suck eggs, but we'll just do it here. Like my Mouse just made a noise like an actual mouse. Scared the life out of me. Why is this? I don't like the new layout, I'll be honest, of CoinMarketCap. Let's go to CoinGecko. Just choose anything. Solana. Yeah, so, be looking at what's the 24-hour volume like, what's the spread, what's the liquidity, what's the depth, all that kind of stuff, just in terms of, has that dried up from where I've looked at it in the past? But for me, the prime example, there was two. Neo was a great one. Back in 2017, 2016, when it was Ant shares, 2017 turned to Neo. This was the Ethereum killer, Chinese backed, going to do everything that Ethereum couldn't. It was going to be amazing. This was easily a $1,000 to $2,000 token. So everyone was saying, bear market hit, fine. Everything takes a hit. But in that 3 years off, it did nothing. And I'm not going to bother wasting time, but I don't think it's social media. Bearing in mind, this had millions of followers. Everyone was talking about it. It was one of the tokens, top 10 token in 2017. I don't think they posted in 3 years more than 20 times. No updates, nothing. Team changed, roadmap disappeared. Everything just kind of went away. Just nothing happened. It's still around. It's probably still doing stuff, but it is not advertising it's doing anything. It's just meandering along. And hey, it's a Chinese token. Maybe it will be great. Maybe the restriction in China really inhibited it. But, for me, it just felt like it died as a project massively. So yes, that's something to definitely bear in mind. Remy, I think I'm going to come back and I'll do like a proper chat on that maybe next week, because I think it's a good point. We've been in bear markets now, for the best part of 18 months. There were projects that we were all really excited about in the last bull run, and are they still worth your interest now? And especially if you've been away from crypto and you're coming back into it, and you've not really given it much thought. How can you quickly just go about looking into stuff and just making sure it's still the same project you thought it was? Last one from George. Could we please go through the current allocation of Science pot, cash, spot, etc.? Also, how much percentage should be held in Bybit for trading derivatives? George, that's one you're really going to have to ask Simon on Friday in his trading book, mainly because I don't know is the answer. I can give you some rough guesses. So previously, as I understood it, he was in Casper and he was in gas. He's sold all his Casper, so I'm assuming that's, I can't remember how much he was in. It's a decent amount. Let's say it was 20% of his overall portfolio. That's all now back in cash. And I think he'd put, someone might correct me, was it 1% into gas or maybe 10%? So either way, I think gas is the only crypto he's currently has as a spot purchase. And maximum that's going to be is 10%. But it's more than likely probably only 1%. In terms of percentage should be held in Bybit for trading derivatives, that is honestly completely down to yourself, because it depends on how much of your portfolio you want to base and trying to increase using derivatives as a means for doing that. Now, you might see Simon putting out a lot of trades that say it's 0.1% max risk, and you think, okay, he's put 0.1% in. No, actually, he hasn't. He's put far more than 0.1% in. It's just his stop loss is set at 0.1% of his overall portfolio. So that's the max risk, maximum he'll ever lose. So if you're going to do that yourself, you're going to use a 0.1% max risk per trade, you then need to make a bit of a calculation of how many trades do I feel comfortable having open at any one time. It certainly suggests no more than 10. That's an awful lot. If you're new to this, no more than 1. If you're relatively experienced, maybe no more than 5. But you also got, that doesn't mean that you only need to move 0.5% of your overall pot. Sorry for this teaching you to suck eggs. Into Bybit or wherever you're doing it, because that's your max risk side. You're gonna have to actually move quite a bit more than that so that you can set your stop loss at a level where you're only risking that 0.1%. So you have to go through a bit of a calculation to work that out there. But certainly, crypto's all about only really put in what you can reasonably go to sleep if you end up losing. that's magnified by 100 when it's derivatives trading, because you speak to most people in the group, depending on which one you're trading, there's stop hunts there. There's a difference between having a last traded price and a marked price, and their difference for stop losses and also for liquidation points, unless you change it. And then suddenly I had an experience where I got liquidated, even though I had a stop in place, because the marked price moved much further. So then suddenly you're losing sleep because you're waking up every 5 minutes to see how your trade's doing. But now we're getting into psychology and all that kind of stuff, which, but yeah, have a think about sort of where you want to be with that. I think most people I speak to generally put about 10% aside for derivatives trading. They don't see that as the main source of where they're going to get their things. But if you're good at it, if you are genuinely good at it, genuinely good at managing your emotions, then, you know, there's no reason why you can't put more of your pot within that. Okay, let's see. Anything else before I move on to just some, let's have a look. Near.Glimmer are a lot more established in Casper. We have no idea how the new mining. So that, you know, that's interesting. You mentioned. Sorry, going back to Casper. So I didn't talk about the Binance listing, did I? What are the chances of Binance listing next year? I have absolutely no idea. When someone asked that in Discord, I tried to sort of do some initial research. And granted, I was on holiday, so I had about an hour of just sort of flick through, trying to have a look at other tokens that, you know, a really small cap and how long it takes them to get on Binance. There's no clear route to just say, oh, well, if ASIC decide they're going to do a machine and that guarantees it's a countdown clock for 3 months and then it'll be listed on Binance. No, you know, there's got to be an interest from Binance to list it. Why would there be an interest from Binance to list it? To make money. They don't do it just so you can buy it. So they want to be able to make money for it. But they also then have to get the tokens for be able to sell it. Now, how are they going to do that? Well, they're going to have to buy them themselves. So they're going to want the price to be relatively low that they can then do that. The other thing you got to see is, well, when you talk about a Binance listing, you're just talking about a spot listing, or you're talking about a derivatives play. And if it's a derivatives play, in my opinion, and people that I speak to and I respect, then you're talking about market makers and, you know, them wanting that need to sort of like manipulate it and drive the price that way. And is there really that? I still haven't seen much. You know, bear in mind, I'm on YouTube all the time. I'm on Twitter all the time. I didn't see that much interaction of people talking about Casper outside of our group. So is it even on Binance's radar? Is it even on market makers' radar? You know, I don't know. Now, trust me, there's plenty of small coins that are on Binance, so absolutely it can make it there. But I just don't think there's this is the route and it's going to be there. But just going back with the ASIC mining, I think, Bijan, you put something in Discord from a Reddit thread about, you know, sort of how low the price can go and it still be profitable for these machines. And, you know, we're talking like not just a drop of 10 times, you know, down to like 100 times. I think it's 0.00000, so 2 extra noughts and a 5. I think it'll still be profitable for these things. And bearing in mind that once these things kick in, the sell pressure is going to be intense because these machines are not cheap. So if someone pays 30 grand for a machine, they're going to have to start selling that Casper immediately to try and make that money back to pay for it. So yeah, that can certainly drive the price down. That's a good point. Okay. It's already 9:45. Bloody hell. BTC. Let's have a look at BTC. Oh, that's not what I wanted. Where is this one? There we go. Okay, it's been a while since when I was off for 2 weeks, I just didn't even log on to any of this kind of stuff. So I've not really looked at it. So I don't even know where we are in terms of the patterns. But this is the daily. Still feels to me like we've had that rise 1, pullback, rise 2. Feels like we're in the pullback for rise 2, pullback on rise 2 at the moment, consolidation period, which would mean we've actually got a rise 3 somewhere on the cards. And, you know, we go back to that mentality. A lot of people are fearful at the moment. When the majority are fearful, you should be greedy. And look what BTC's gone and done. You know, it's gone and done next to nothing over the last 2 weeks, has it? But it's whipped down here and it's found support, and I think that's the 800 EMA. I'm going to start labeling these because I'm always forgetting. 200. It's the 200 EMA. It's hit the 200. It's bounced off it beautifully, and then recovered the 800, and then climbed back. And it's struggling at the moment at the 50. I'm going to zoom in so people can see it's a little bit better. You know, it's finding resistance. So it's kind of being squeezed between those two. Now, Simon put a picture out there. I didn't even actually look at it in any detail from Hyblock with sort of the liquidity levels, but we can kind of see these vector candles. This is the daily. We'll drop down a little bit on later on, but there is still this vector candle that could be recovered all the way down to 22,200 effectively. And so that can't be ruled out, but a drop down there still doesn't negate. That could still be classed as within this, you know, consolidation period. For me, for this to be negated, that would actually have to go down and breach 20,000, and then we'd be talking about. I probably got that wrong, and there isn't a rise 3 on the card, so we've still got that to look at. So I'm still thinking there's a rise up there, and you know, we've talked about these targets for 33, maybe 37. That seems like it's a long way away. But do you remember middle of April, only 6 weeks ago, when we were at 31,000, and you know, everyone was shitting themselves thinking we'd missed the boat, and 37k, 40k was already on the cards. You know, crypto has an amazing ability to just change the emotional narrative of people so quickly. So, you know, just bear that in mind. We drop it down now a few time frames. Go to the 4 hour. I don't think there's zoomed out just so I can kind of get a look before we see where we are. So what we had on the 4 hour, I think if I remember last time, was we had, is this the M? I think this was the M. Drop 1, rise back. Is this potentially drop 2? But it's kind of pulled back pretty quickly. I'm not sure. I might have to have a bit of a better look at this one. Zoom in. Depends where I draw that initial. I mean, this is still looking at the same thing. I've just zoomed in a bit closer, but that was what I'd originally said. This before I went away. This is April. We had that. I was like, that's still fine. That's still drop 1 in my eyes. But that isn't drop 2. It's not taking that out. So that's still, you know, that's still part of one consolidation area. This is looking quite messy, isn't it? Let me just take that off. We don't necessarily need it at the moment. So this for me would be D2. But then that means all of this is just a consolidation, but that has gone slightly lower. Still feels like it hasn't had that, you know, massive forward down. Actually, wait a second. Because this has gone lower, someone will correct me, I'm sure. Or I'll speak to someone after this call. Is that the consolidation? Is that, I think that is a stopping vector candle. Is that then D3? And are we in the process of trying to form some sort of bottoming pattern? You know, is that like the first leg down and this is going to be like some form of W and then we climb out of it? So maybe looking at around, you know, if it comes back down and bounces off 25.4 on the 4 hour, maybe we are looking at that. I don't know. I really haven't looked at the charts even this week. So that's sort of where I'm seeing, you know, the longest way around doing that. Potentially there. So even this is potentially suggesting to me that we might have had drop through. We might be looking at some sort of bottoming pattern. This is, you know, very obvious. It'd be a very obvious W if it was. Nothing to necessarily be afraid of there. Again, we've got the 800 moving along. It's also a vector candle recovery zone. I mean, that looks like it's a prime for the taking there. Do we see like a short squeeze up to here, taking out the 200? Not quite taking, maybe nipping into that before coming back down. Mr. Tacos has put, the fact the last move was fully recovered, it likely wasn't a drop, or it was a drop and a fast W on the R1. Done. Okay. So maybe that was a W. Okay, I see what you're saying. Right. I mean, it's a 4 hour. We can keep on going down to lower time frames to try and get something to help our mindsets here. Thank you for that. I mean, this does look, when you're on the 1 hour, that does now look like a W, and that does look like a rise one with a consolidation. That looks a lot clearer. I bet if we took it on the 15-minute, it'd look even sweeter. So, you know, if that's the case, those levels we still identified, you know, you could still see it come back down here in this consolidation. But maybe we are actually in the part where we should be expecting rises, you know, significant moves upwards and just consolidating down. Maybe that's what we should be looking at. That's how I'm going to frame my mindset at the moment. Okay. I start charging myself a beer every time I make that mistake. I'm just conscious of what the time is, guys. I think, I'll be honest, I'll open up some questions to people, but I'm probably not going to go through many of the other tokens. Oh, there was Carver. Someone asked for Carver. Sorry, I will go through that one. Tim, interesting. I think Simon's in a BTC short. Well, I suppose with that, it's just how long you want to hold that short for. So this consolidation period, I don't know when the short was placed, but yeah, this consolidation period, maybe it does come back down and we see a retest of, you know, 26 dead. We cover 50% this vector zone, maybe down to 25.9 or something, and then it moves back up. But if I was in a short at the moment, I'd be managing that. I'd be, you know, do I feel comfortable enough to move the stop into a break even, and very much then, you know, sort of, am I realistically reevaluating where my take profit already is? Have I even set a take profit? If I haven't, and looking at where we can go from there, do I take a little bit off the table now and let the money run? You know, pay yourself. That's always a good motto. You know, you've done the hard work by getting into the trade. You've made profit. You've stuck it to the man. So, you know, don't be afraid to take a little bit off the table. Keep some in there. Move your stop, and then see what happens. Sorry, so Carver. Here we go. Let's take this out. Let's step or two. Let's get rid of all of these right now. Let's just have a look at it first. You know what Carver reminds me of? Is Link. Do you remember Link? It just stayed in that range, or it has stayed in that range for just such a long period of time. I mean, this is the same with Carver. You know, this is 7 months we're talking about here. And it's kind of just stayed in that range. Okay, Link was a lot more down, but still, this one has certainly kept a line there. And I don't know how you want to manage that crap line, but something like that. But it has, you know, it's come back off that. I mean, this is where, you know, I think if BTC does what I think it's going to do, then it's going to go back up as well. But if it's not, then I'd be looking around about 75 cents initially. I mean, you could say it's at 92, but it's kind of already almost there. It dipped down to that on Monday. You know, if I wasn't in it and I was looking to get in it, I'd want to see if it could get down to 72, 73, and then look to position myself in it. If we have a look at, we'll have to take it from this one. Zoom in so people can see. It's not the cleanest. Let me just tidy that up. Let's come back down, and it's fighting the 618 at the moment. We know I love the 618 because it's in orange. 92, that's the 0.5, 87, and then the 72 is where I drew it from initially. So obviously it's going to get back down to there. But okay, if you're looking at others, they're the levels I'd be looking at. 0.925 I mean, it depends what you're doing. You're looking for spot buy, you're looking to derivatives trade that, you're already at 98, move down to 92, and still a 5% move. Just depends on what leverage you use and how much you want to do it. Maybe wicks down to 382 and it's almost a 10% move. So maybe there's a play to be had there, but where do you put your stop? It's gonna have to be today alone. We've seen it go all the way up to 123. So yeah, it's a tough one to do if you're looking at it from that point of view. Okay, I'll be honest, guys. I think that's it. It's first one back. I've not been well this week, and I'm feeling pretty shattered. So I'll just go to full screen. But if anyone does have any questions or got any feedback, or let me close the poll whilst we do that, or they want a token, researching a bit more, feel free to let us know. What are you thinking about that? Will Coinbase and Binance leave the US after their constant run-ins with the SEC? 66% said yes, 33% have said no. I think Coinbase has already kind of started to make noises that they're looking elsewhere. It wouldn't surprise me. I think there's plenty of crypto-friendly countries out there. And when I say move, I mean move their head office. I'm sure they'll still have some footprint in America. And with Binance, they've got Binance US. I just wonder. I think they'll weather the storm. They'll want to keep Binance US. It'll just be restricting, just as restrictive as it is. And I don't know what the SEC has in terms of this magic document to prove that they have been letting high value class assets circumnavigate the systems. If they have and they've got the evidence for it, then there's a hefty fine coming their way. But they've got to prove it. That's the problem now. Going to go to court and they've got to prove it. And they've got to convince not just a judge, but they've got to convince a jury. Not all civil actions require a jury. But if you look on this one, jury trial demanded. So, yeah, they got to convince a few people there. You can't see that because it's full screen, but never mind. Okay, that's it for me, guys. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks for your comments and your questions. It was quite nice to come back to that many questions and try and go through it. Appreciate it's a couple of weeks worth of build up there, but it's always good to just get some kind of interaction from you lot. So thanks a lot. Hope you all have the enjoyable rest of your week. Remember, Simon's trading pub's on Friday this week, same time. So just bear that in mind. It's not tomorrow. And I'll be back to the regular Tuesdays, 8 p.m. Going forward. But other than that, all I was even to say is thanks a lot and have a good night, everyone. Speak to you all soon.